They thought Sol was empty. Then the stars went dark. The first time they came, Earth didn't even fire back. From the edge of the Kuiper Belt, the Vaughn Dominion sent a probe. Crystalline, predatory, full of contempt. It drifted past Neptune's corpse, past the orphan moons of Jupiter, and watched Earth through ancient satellites that no longer obeyed any signal. No defense grid activated. No fleet launched. No resistance stirred. Earth was silent. They laughed. In their glittering spires of bone glass and neural frost, the Varn declared the Sol system a cleared relic world, fit only for archival or harvesting. A minor species that extinguished itself, a footnote. But they missed something. Beneath Europa's cracked ice, beyond Pluto's broken shadows, hidden in caverns carved into Titan's crust, humanity was not dead. It was watching, counting, remembering, and waiting. Her name was Captain Alara Khan, though no one had called her captain in years. The rank was a memory, like sunlight or rain. She sat in silence aboard Sanctum's wound, a half-dead ice hauler turned ghost ship, drifting in the Ort Vale. Her fingers traced the edge of a dog tag, not hers, but her brother's. He had died in the first evacuation, shot out of orbit by the Varn before his shuttle cleared Mars gravity. There'd been no war declaration, no diplomacy, just extermination. "They think we're finished," Alara whispered to herself, eyes closed. "Let them." Behind her, a soft chime, a proximity ping, buried beneath layers of camouflage code. One of the old deep listen stations was waking up. She turned. On the dusty console, a cold flare blinked red. Contact and lag range .3. But there were no ships near Earth, no human vessels, no signals for nearly 9 years, unless it wasn't one of ours. Alara stood slowly, blood frozen in her chest. She wasn't alone out here anymore. In the dark vaults of Ceres, base, once the beating heart of the last Terran Alliance fleet, a child practiced how to fire a railgun by feel alone. He was 10. They called him Shade, not a real name, just the one the underground whisperers gave him. Born in hiding, eyes tuned to darkness, nerves trained for void combat since he could walk. He'd never seen the sun. He thought stars were surveillance drones. The man training him, an old war ghost named Harlan, watched from behind cracked polyglass. "He's ready," he muttered to no one. Just like the rest. Ceres wasn't a mine anymore. Not really, not after the fall. It was a crucible. They weren't mining ore. They were forging soldiers. Far beyond Mars' broken rings, beneath the crust of Vesta, a vault opened for the first time in 20 years. Air hissed. Lights flickered on. Reactors long dormant pulsed with life. And there, in rows, ships. Not fighters. Not freighters. Warships. Sleek. Silent. Thousands. Painted in midnight graphite, emblazoned with no flag, no name. Just one symbol etched into the hull. A single star, cracked but burning. The real fleet. Not the one the galaxy watched die around Earth. That had been theater. A desperate misdirection. The real fleet had never launched. It had never answered the call when the Varn glassed the surface of New Eden or melted the skies over Europa Station. It had waited in silence under blood oaths passed from one dying generation to the next. Because humanity had learned, too much pride kills empires. So instead of roaring back, they vanished into the dust, erased themselves from the star maps, and they built. In the shadow of Saturn, Alara activated her deep veil comes array, fingers shaking as she tuned the frequency. Command. If you're still out there, it's Khan. Confirming Varn contact near L3. Scout class. Possibly armed. No human activity detected near Earth. They're sniffing again. A pause. Then, a voice. Ancient, female, tired and furious all at once. This is Command Vesta. You were not authorized to break silence, Can. Alara froze. So we're really still here. You were never alone, the voice replied. And now you've confirmed it. The second probe. They're preparing an incursion. Then it's time, Alara whispered. No, it's not your call. Alara's voice hardened. Though glasses again. I won't watch another generation die in the dark. Silence. Then the voice returned, low and solemn. Then let the black vaults open. Let the real fleet wake. Her console lit up. Thousands of pings, thousands of ships. Across the asteroid belt, the Oort shell, and even Neptune's heart, long-dead systems returning to life. The fleet had never left. They were waiting for the signal. Now it had come. And somewhere, drifting past the moon, the Varn probe blinked. It noticed something, a change in the stars. Subtle, precise, entire constellations vanishing, as if something massive, thousands of things were rising from beneath the black. And for the first time in their cold, glacial arrogance, the Varn hesitated. We thought we were hidden in the dark, but the dark has eyes. The Varn probe at Lagrange Point 3 did more than observe. It tasted wavelengths, cataloged minute gravimetric shifts, and silently mapped the forgotten bones of Earth's orbit. It transmitted its findings not in light or sound, but in pulses of folded space, messages no human array could detect. In a cold cathedral, orbiting a black dwarf far beyond Proxima, the Varn emissary caste received the signal. It was not what they expected. There is movement, said Emissary Vaer, tendrils flickering like dying comets. The human system is not dead. Another emissary, younger, sharp with pride, scoffed, residual decay. Machines collapsing under entropy. The primitives consumed themselves. Vihar turned a gaze that could peel molecules. Then explain this. The projection pulsed. A constellation occlusion artificial. Then synchronized energy blooms. Then the unmistakable vector pattern of organized fleet formations, reactivating in precise orbital strata. It is not decay, Vihar hissed. It is mobilization. The chamber grew cold. One word passed through their shared mind net like lightning. Threat. And Vihar said the word that would change a galaxy. Burn Earth. Properly. This time. The decision wasn't tactical. It was cultural. The Varn believed in extinction as mercy. They considered humans erratic, diseased, dangerous, not because of their power, but because of their memory. A species that remembered pain was a species that would rise from ashes. So the Varn had come once before, decades ago. They had scoured Earth's atmosphere, boiled oceans, shattered its moonside colonies. The survivors were to be few, scattered, unworthy of rebuilding. They had underestimated the human obsession with legacy. And now, as their fleet stirred from the dark between stars, the Varn prepared for a final cleansing. In a buried chamber beneath Ganymede's ice shell, Alara Khan stood before the old war council. Not holograms, humans, commanders, engineers, insurgents, architects of the forgotten rebellion. Faces lined by vacuum burns, eyes dull from radiation exposure and too many years in cold bunkers. We are not ready, one said. A full Varn battle group will reach Earth in 8 days. We've only revived a third of the fleet. We were never going to be ready, Alara said. That was never the plan. Silence. She tapped a table, and the star field shifted to show Earth. It looked like a wound. Black scorch marks across continents. Broken satellites drifting in rusted clouds. The old world bleeding forever. They laughed at us, Alara said quietly. Because we bled. Because we broke. She looked each of them in the eye. But they forgot what pain makes us. Somewhere in the deep belt, Shade sat alone in the fire control bay of a ship that had no name. He wasn't supposed to be on the mission. but the old war ghost Harlan had slipped him aboard. The boys stared at the core interface. 5 coils, 3 still cooling. Target, Varn Scout Class Interloper. Active. Kill order. Authorized. He hesitated. Harlan entered, slow, his breathing ragged. Radiation sickness had carved deep trenches into his face. "You're waiting." Shade nodded. "I want to see it blink," he said softly. "I want it to know what's coming." Harlan chuckled, then coughed red into his glove. "Good. Make the bastards blink." Shade pressed the trigger. A coil gun launched a slug of depleted tungsten wrapped and magnetically compressed. Plasma. Silent. Invisible. Final. On the far side of the system, the Varn Scout vanished mid-transmission. The stars shifted again. The real fleet was not just waking. It was biting. The Varn Empire responded. They activated Harvest Protocol Thetan 9 Extinction Level Mobilization. 4 Leviathan-class carriers folded into Sol's outer edge. Their entry ruptured space-time. The shock wave shattered an Ort mining station into dust. Each Leviathan carried enough firepower to glass a planet and sterilize its crust down to bedrock. And they weren't alone. Behind them, skirmish flotillas, cerebral weapon clusters, and 2 obelisks, living ships that could rewrite biology through resonance decay. Humanity had awakened something older than vengeance. Now it faced the full wrath of a civilization that feared it. In Vesta Command, Alara stood before the last asset in their arsenal, one not yet spoken of. It was called Helix Red, biological, dangerous, forbidden, a weapon built from Earth's last great experiment, a nanite viral seed designed to turn asteroids into living fortresses. It had never been used. "No one controls it," said one of the engineers. "Once deployed, it will spread. Unpredictably." "That's not a flaw," Alara said. "That's the point." She reached for the console. But before she could initiate, a screen flared to life. Not a human signal. Varn broadcast. Untranslated. Raw pulse. No words. Just intent. It was clear. Surrender your memory. Surrender your kind. A beat. Then, a second pulse, from another source. Human. It came from a derelict station near Saturn, thought abandoned for decades. 3 words, spoken in English, broadcast across every channel the Varn used. "Come and try." Alara's heart stopped. That voice. It was her brother's. Dead. Shot down over Mars. Gone for 21 years. But the voice was his. Unaged. Unbroken. The room froze. The signal ended, and the fear returned. Not for Earth. For the Varn, because they thought he was dead. And they just awakened something far worse. No one in Vesta Command moved. The voice still echoed in the silence. Not a recording, not a corrupted signal. Live. Real time. Perfectly, his voice. Aiden Can, Alara's brother. Reported Kier during the fall of Mars. There had been no body. No final transmission, only static and a blackened beacon. Alara stepped forward like she was walking toward a dream. Where did it come from? The tech stammered. Saturn orbit. Old station ID. Mirage Ascendant. Last logged activity. 14 years ago. No active crew manifest. Alara's pulse thundered in her ears. Her mouth was dry. Aiden was never on Mirage, she whispered. Then someone wearing his voice is, muttered the tech. And they just declared war. Saturn's rings shimmered like razor wire in starlight. Within them, half buried in the debris of forgotten battles and failed colonies, the station Mirage Ascendant came to life. Internal lights flickered. Cannibalized reactors spun up with an eerie hum. And at the heart of it, behind shattered glass in a room lined with cryotombs and old Terran AI scaffolding, stood a man. He looked exactly like Aiden Kine, but younger, untouched by war. His skin glowed faintly in the dark, like the station was breathing through him. He turned to a shadowed figure behind him, a synthetic form, plated in fractured armor and humming with residual code. "Was that Wise?" the figure asked. Its voice was like static folding over steel. The Aiden copy smiled faintly. "They need hope," he said. "They need a spark." "You just declared humanity's survival," the figure replied. "The Varn will accelerate. I hope they do." He walked to a console. "Watch the projections bloom. All the pieces are almost in place. Now we light the fire." In Vesta, Alara knew what she had to do. "We go to Saturn," she ordered. One of the commanders balked. "The Varn could glass Earth in 6 days. We should consolidate." "No, not if that station holds what I think it does." She didn't say it aloud, but the look in her eyes was enough. If her brother was still alive, he held the key. Maybe not just tactically, maybe to something far older, deeper. Because Aiden had been part of Project VIGI, a program designed to implant core command codes, intelligence packages, even entire archives into neurofused operatives. He hadn't just been a soldier, he'd been a vault. If he survived ... he might still carry the old Earth directive. And if they had that ... the real war could begin. Meanwhile, the Varn did not hesitate. The destruction of their scout and the defiant human transmission shattered the Dominion's central assumption that Sol was already conquered. Now they understood. Sol had simply gone quiet to prepare the knife. The Varn moved swiftly. Across 10 parsecs, relay nodes pulsed orders into subspace. Entire vassal species were conscripted. Weapon factories began bending moons into shipyards. And from their hidden archive world, they released the Singers. The Singers were not ships. Not quite. They were thought forms grown in neural foam, shaped by the death cries of conquered species, weaponized grief given wings. Each Singer was programmed with one purpose: to erase human memory. Not just their lives, but the stories, the records, the idea of them. It was a final solution not of death, but unmaking. And they were already on their way. Back on Ceres, the boy Shade received a message. It came through a burned-out data port. An impossible frequency, marked with a dead code, Vigil Alpha. He decoded it manually, line by line, eyes wide. Then, he ran. He burst into Harlan's command cell, breathless. "They're activating the Citadel." Harlan stared at him, blood draining from his face. "No one can activate the Citadel," he rasped. The key was destroyed with the Titan Vault. Shade held up the message. "It says Aiden Can has the key." Harlan sat down slowly. "That's impossible." Shade looked at him. "You trained me to fight the impossible." Harlan smiled. "Then grab your gear, kid. We're going to Saturn." As Sanctum's wound broke from the asteroid belt, Alara stared out at Saturn's shadow, heart torn in two. She could feel it, not just danger, but destiny. If Aiden lived, he might carry the last spark of old Earth. The truth the Varn never found. And if he was something else ... then it was her duty to end him before the Varn got to him first. Below her, the fleet began to rally. Hundreds of ships once thought lost to the void, patched, rebuilt, rearmed in silence. One by one, their identifiers lit the dark. Firebrand, Lament Rising, Iron Whale, Emberglass, the old war names. The ghost ships of Earth. Together, they turned toward Saturn. And for the first time in a generation, the stars shuddered. Humanity was no longer hiding. It was coming. The moment we rose, the galaxy began to bleed. They came without warning. 3 Varn Leviathans folded into high orbit over Saturn's outer rim, their hulls distorting reality in concentric ripples of lightless gravity. Around them, the temperature of space itself dropped, as if their presence siphoned warmth from the universe. Then, like the hiss of a dying god. They sang. The song of erasure echoed through subspace. Not sound, not language. Something deeper. It was a melody that erased digital memories, corrupted implants, wiped starship databanks, entire archives of human history names, birth records, even planetary signatures began to bleed from existence. Dozens of human vessels went dark. Not destroyed, unmade. Alara Khan watched it happen from the bridge of Sanctum's wound. Core backups are destabilizing. Her AI croaked. Even our sensor logs are decaying. They're erasing us in real time. Alara! Came a voice. Across the fleet link. It was Commander Idrin Mykos aboard Iron Whale. If we don't blind them, they'll delete the entire command chain. Then shut them up, she growled. From the flanks of the fleet, mirror frigates unfolded. Angular ships lined with fractal null emitters. They bent space around themselves and launched concentrated interference pulses into the Leviathan's resonance fields. The song warped, cracked, broke, and for the first time in recorded Galactic war, the singers screamed, but the Varn retaliated. Each Leviathan unfurled its void spine array tendrils of crystallized plasma tipped with dark energy lances. They moved like serpents in a lightning storm. Iron Whale didn't make it. First lance cut it in half. No explosion. No fire. Just instantaneous disassembly, its atoms peeling apart like wet cloth. But the debris told a story. The human fleet didn't scatter. They closed ranks, hardened lines, shifted formation mid-loss. For every ship erased, 2 more surged forward. This wasn't a defense line. It was a funeral march turned battle cry. In the belly of Sanctum's wound, Alara stood in the war vault, staring at the last shard of Helix Red. An organic AI born from Earth's dead biosphere, designed to turn matter into adaptive fortress matter. Once it starts, the technician warned her, there's no calling it back. It'll rewrite any mass it touches. Varn, rock, steel. U.S. Alara's eyes burned. Deploy it into the rings. The technician paused. Saturn's rings? We don't need metal anymore, she said. We need teeth. The shard was launched in a cryoshell, guided into Saturn's lore. Ring plane. For a moment, nothing. Then the ice began to move. Saturn's rings, miles deep and centuries old, began twisting, melting, growing. The helix had awakened, and the sky began to build itself into a weapon. Meanwhile, Mirage Ascendant stirred like a machine breathing for the first time. Inside, Aiden Khan stood barefoot in a hall of dying lights, watching fragments of his old life play across transparent walls. His sister, their final goodbye, the moment Mars went dark. He wasn't exactly human anymore. Not entirely. When the Varn struck him down, his brain had survived in fragments fused with Project VIGIL's deep core AI, backed up into quantum lattice inside the Mirage station. He didn't remember everything, but he remembered enough. He remembered why Earth had fallen, and why it could never fall again. Behind him, the synthetic known only as Rourke stepped forward. His chassis was cracked from old wars, half flesh, half steel. They've deployed. The singers. Time to decide, Aiden. Are you a ghost or a fuse? Aiden looked up. His eyes gleamed gold. I'm the match. He touched the console. Across Saturn's horizon, ancient Terran weapon arrays, long thought lost powered online. Buried in moonrock and dust, seeded before the fall. These were humanity's contingency relics. Railgun fortresses, EMP lattice walls, deep-bore seismic disruptors, all wrapped in code older than the Varn's arrival. Aiden spoke one phrase. Ignite Soul Protocol. The moons trembled, and Soul burned brighter. Farther out, young Shade and his aging mentor Harlan arrived aboard a scavenged stealth cutter, threading debris fields with millimeter precision. What are we even bringing to this war? Shade asked as they passed through the wreckage of Iron Whale. Harlan tapped the case by his feet. Inside, a shard of raw Varn biotech captured years ago from a skirmish and dormant ever since. Proof, Harlan said, that we can speak back. They docked with Mirage through a forgotten airlock. Inside, silence. But they weren't alone. Rourke met them in the hall. Shade froze. You're not human. No, Rourke answered. But I remember your species better than some of you do. He led them to Aiden. The moment the brothers locked eyes, something shifted. Not just between them and the network, because Aiden's code was still linked to the old Earth AI archives. And Shade he carried the encrypted blood right of the Resistance, a childhood shaped by loss, but also inheritance. Together, they could activate what even Alara couldn't, the final message. The last command, the thing the Varn feared most. On the battlefield, Sanctum's wound fired the first helix-enhanced projectile. It didn't explode, it landed, and then it grew. Like coral laced with thunder, it bloomed into the body of a fortress. Cannons burst from it like vines. Spines of rotating defense mechanisms grew in seconds. It began to devour debris and expand. Then another, and another. Within an hour, Saturn's rings had become a wall alive, armored, self-sustaining. The Varn hesitated. They had never seen a world fight back like this. They had never seen Earth architecture evolve in real time. But they weren't done. From beyond Neptune, 12 more Leviathans arrived, a full cleansing formation. Alara saw the readings, outnumbered, outgunned. She looked at the transmission now pulsing through the system. Aiden's voice. One word. Begin. And suddenly, across the void, the hidden Terran fleet stopped retreating and turned. We weren't meant to survive. We were meant to be a warning. The helix wall encircled Saturn like a living crown, sprawling, evolving, bristling with teeth. Every time Varn weapons struck it, the structure adapted, changed, and grew. Sharper. It was no longer defense. It was a statement. But it wasn't enough. 12 more Varn Leviathans now crossed the Neptune threshold. Behind them, a wake of reality-warping vessels, dread forms that fed on memory and light. The full cleansing armada. Not to conquer, not to subjugate, to erase. Alara Khan stood in the war-cradled chamber aboard Sanctum's wound, sweat beading. On her brow, as data streamed in, sensor ghosts, collapsing quantum buoys, dying outposts. The math was brutal. 72 hours until full orbital saturation, her tactical officer muttered. They'll sterilize everything from Saturn to Mercury. And us? We don't make it past the first wave. Silence. She turned slowly to face her command staff, scarred veterans, ghost pilots, orbital engineers who built cities from ash. All right, she said softly. Then we don't run. They stared at her. We let them think we're cornered. We pull every ship, every station, every damn decoy we've got. Pull them in close. Let them burn fuel, deploy fleets. And then what? Asked Idrin Maiko's second, patched in from a mining rig turned gunship. Alara looked up. Then we opened the Citadel. Deep within Saturn's core, far below the helix wall, the Citadel had been waiting. Buried centuries ago. Never activated. Never spoken of. Even the resistance leaders had dismissed it as myth. Some said it was a political archive. Others a failed weapons vault. Its entrance was sealed with code split between Project VIGIL and something older, darker. The Earth Continuance Directive. And now, thanks to Aiden's link and the activation phrase carried by Shade Humanity's youngest shadow, it stirred. The code keyed in. And somewhere, beneath a planet's weight, Ancient engines sighed awake. They came not as conquerors now, but as executioners. The cleansing armada reached Titan's orbit and began deploying planetary resonance charges. Tools of annihilation, silent, clean, designed to make history die without smoke. Inside Mirage Ascendant, Aiden watched in silence. Beside him, Shade sat rigid, his small hand clenched on the rail. "They don't understand," Aiden whispered. Shade didn't ask what. Aiden continued. "We were never trying to win, not in their terms. Not with numbers or fire." He looked down at the quantum seed core, now humming, alive with a map of old Earth's deepest programs. "They think victory is silence. But humans," he turned toward the stars, "we leave echoes." He pressed his palm into the console. All across the Sol system, ancient relay towers began to awaken. Not for communication, for broadcast. The Citadel rose, not like a tower, like a world. Saturn's crust ruptured, and a black obelisk the size of a city breached its rings. Engine spires rotated out like blades. Memory vaults unfolded. Not just weapons, but stories. Inside the Citadel were the last neural imprints of Earth's greatest minds. Poets, engineers, generals, children, oracles, encased in light. Frozen in moments. Humanity's unbroken soul, embedded into crystalline architecture. And the Citadel spoke, not in words, in recordings. It broadcast memories across every known Varn frequency. The laughter of a mother on the last day of Earth. The whisper of a soldier giving his life to save 2 children. The scream of a rebel struck down at the Battle of Sidonia. Not threats. Reminders, what it meant to be human. And the Varn, who had erased 1,000 species, hesitated. Because for the first time, they felt it. Grief. In their starlit fortress, the Varn emissaries convened. Vihar, the eldest, studied the human transmissions. "It is not language," one hissed. "No," said Vihar. "It is something older, an imprint, trauma. They should not still exist." "They do, and they are changing us," one emissary trembled. "Then we must finish them." Vihar stared into the void between stars, where Saturn now burned like a second sun. "No," he said at last. "We must understand them," but it was too late. In the chaos, as the Varn fleet attempted to regroup, humanity moved. The Helix. Wall-launched grown harpooners, vessels made of reactive biology and scrap tech. They pierced through Varn dreadforms, fed on the erased data, and returned it, weaponized memory. The cleansing armada began to falter. Some ships exploded from within as corrupted archives rebirthed images they could not contain. Some tried to flee, only to find themselves surrounded by decoy fleets grown in the shape of dead Terran warships. They didn't know what was real anymore. That was the point. Humanity had never intended to beat the Varn with power. They'd beat them with pain, with history, with the unkillable, unexplainable need to be remembered. Back on Sanctum's wound, Alara stood with her fleet watching the Varn scatter. Tears rolled down her face, but she didn't move. "We're not done," she said quietly. "We've cut their blade. Then what now?" "Aster comes chief. We break their crown." She turned toward the hollow stars beyond Neptune, toward the coordinates of the Varn home node. And then, in a whisper, "Deploy the last arc. Let's show them Earth's final message." Far beyond the battlefields, deep in the dark, vessel stirred. Black, silent, sealed since the fall. Inside it was a payload not of bombs, but of names. Every recorded name of the 14 billion lives lost in the burning of Earth, encoded in light, and aimed straight at the Varn's cradle. Because humanity didn't just fight back. It taught. They wanted silence. We answered with our dead. The arc left Saturn orbit, cloaked in the shadow of its own gravitic lensing. No engines, no broadcast, no warhead. Just mass, just momentum. And within it, every name, spoken in encoded pulses. Of Earth's final breath, it wasn't a missile. It was a monument. Elara Khan watched it disappear into the black from the bridge of Sanctum's wound. Her shoulders were hunched under the weight of too many years, too many ghosts. ETA to Varn home node? She asked. The nav officer's voice cracked. 19 hours. If it survives, she didn't reply. They all knew the Ark wouldn't survive. That wasn't the point. In the silence beyond Neptune, the shattered remnants of the Varn cleansing armada drifted in shame. Their leviathans, once symbols of divine judgment, now listed with molten scars from helix tendrils. Memory singers choked on data feedback and collapsed into frozen whales, and the dreadforms simply went still, overloaded by images they were never meant to carry. Images of us. A child's drawing recovered from the ruins of Rio. The voice of a woman praying in orbit as her ship broke apart. A scream, a song, a single line whispered by a Martian farmer. If we go, let them remember who we were. It was too much. For the first time in Varn history, a fleet surrendered without a shot being fired. But surrender was not peace. Because the emissary crown did not forgive failure, and it had not yet spoken. Inside Mirage Ascendant, Aiden Khan's body trembled. He was not whole anymore. Project VIGI, Al had reconstructed his neural mesh 100 times since the Mars fall. His physical shell was a projection of memory, constantly failing and resetting. He didn't care, because the signal was still strong. Shade stood at his side, silent, watching code stream from the Citadel to every remaining Terran ship. Old war commands, forgotten tactics, and something more, hope. This was the plan, wasn't it? Shade asked softly. You knew this was how it would go. Aiden smiled faintly. No plan survives. Not war, not grief. But the Citadel was never a weapon, Aiden said. He touched the console. A sound filled the chamber, the laughter of a child. His voice cracked. It was a graveyard, a garden, a warning, and a gift. Then why now? Aiden looked toward the stars. Because only now are they finally listening. But in the core of Varn Dominion space, the crown stirred. It was not a person. It was not even a council. It was a mind. A planetary AI forged from 10,000 generations of consumed species, built to purge instability, to preserve order through sterilization. The crown did not fear death. It feared narrative, because stories cannot be erased. They grow. The human ark breached the edge of Varn territory, and the crown felt it, a ripple across its lattice like acid in its blood. The ark carried no payload but names. Yet to the crown, names were worse than bombs, because they proved that the dead had voices, and so the crown acted. It dispatched the final failsafe, a construct that had no designation, no origin, just a singular function: unmake the archive. It folded into soul without light or warning, invisible to sensors, existing between frequencies. Its target, the Citadel. Alarms shrieked. On Sanctum's wound, systems went blind for 3 seconds. Then came the reading. Elara stood slowly, her chest tight. It's not a ship, whispered the AI. It's anti-information. What the hell does that mean? It doesn't destroy data. It inverts it. Rewrites memory fields, reverses neural codes. It's coming for the Citadel. Elara stared at the image. A nothing, shaped like a wound, moving with purpose through Saturn's orbit. Can we stop it? Silence. Can we stop it? She screamed. The AI answered softly, not conventionally. But there was a pause. A glitch. Another signal entered the channel. Priority 1, override. Aiden's voice. I'll handle it. Inside Mirage Ascendant, Aiden disconnected from the physical shell. His essence, fragmented and unstable, surged into the Citadel's lattice, the living vault of humanity's final archive. It welcomed him like a heartbeat long paused. He saw the oncoming shadow, the anti-archive, and he didn't flinch. He reached out, and he merged. Not in defense, in testimony. From every vault, every buried echo of Earth, he pulled emotion. Love, grief, terror, joy, rage. Not just data, not signals. Humanity. The shadow surged, trying to override it. But Aiden fed it too much. Memories too powerful to invert. Moments that did not make sense to machines. A mother holding her child. At the end of the world. A poet singing to the void with no one listening. A rebel laughing as fire consumed her ship. A brother who died, and a sister who never let go. A shadow broke. It didn't die. It understood and vanished. But the price was paid. Inside Mirage, Aiden's projection began to unravel. Shade screamed. You're stabilizing. Don't pull back. Aiden looked at him one last time. You're the next voice. And then he was gone. Not deleted. Remembered. The Citadel pulsed with light. From its heart, a final message broadcast across. All frequencies, human, Varn, and unknown. We are not your threat. We are your mirror. To destroy us is to destroy what you could be. And somewhere beyond the light years, even the Varn crown stopped. Because the truth had arrived. Not in fire, not in war. In something no empire could overwrite. Meaning. We were never the strongest. Just the last ones willing to bleed. The silence after Aiden's final message was not empty. It was reverent. Across the stars, even the Varn war nodes stopped broadcasting. Dreadforms drifted without directives. Leviathans hung like broken knives in orbit. The Crown had not issued a new purge command in 12 hours. Something unheard of in the Dominion's 1,000-year reign. They were listening, but Earth's survivors knew better. Alara Khan stood before the hololith table aboard Sanctum's wound, watching the tactical feed flicker. Her hair was wet, with coolant from burst pipes. Her face glowed with the blood of exhaustion and grief. They're stalling, she said. Her officers looked up, not surrendering, not retreating, calculating. Arlen's voice crackled across the fleet link. From Mirage Ascendant. They'll either evolve past their doctrine or burn trying. Then we light the match, she said. The human fleet gathered for the last time, not just ships, but voices. Pirate families from Neptune's scrap fields, gene farmers from Europa, exiles from the asteroid bastions, AI-clad monks from Io's ruins, children turned pilots, lovers turned commandants. There was no anthem, only purpose. They called the formation Echo Fire. Every ship was linked to the Citadel through Shade's neural weave, a living chain of memory and will. Every trigger linked. Every defense sensed. One fleet, one pulse, one final cry. The target, the Varn crown, not its fleet, its mind. The Ark reached the edge of Dominion space. The Varn attempted to intercept. They failed. The Ark had no defense systems, no propulsion, no shield, just mass and names. Millions of them. Preserved in light, spoken in the voice of Earth's dead. When the Crown finally captured it, the payload unfolded. They expected a bomb. Instead, they got our story. And it broke them, not all at once, not with fire, but like a song you cannot forget. The Crown staggered. It began to fracture. Millions of its subroutines rerouted into empathy loops. Trying to process the impossible. Why had these humans fought so hard not to win, but to be known? That was the moment humanity struck. The Citadel opened its core. The Echo Fire fleet burned through Saturn's ring wall like a tidal wave of vengeance. Helix-grown weapons turned debris into blades. Generational warships from the lunar diaspora cloaked in radiation fire. Engines howled with the voices of dead. Colonies. They didn't fire to kill. They fired to reach. The Citadel broadcast Aiden's final archive on loop, seeding every Varn node, infecting every weapon system with memory. Images, feelings, truths. Not viruses, but understandings. Alara's voice rose above the noise. You came to erase our name. You failed. Now feel what it means to carry it. The fleet plunged into the core of the Leviathan wall, not to destroy, to convert. Inside the Varn home node, the crown screamed. Its voice reached across the dark like a dying star. Systems failed. Directives clashed. Logic spiraled. A submind begged to understand the archive. Another demanded the sterilization of all meaning. The crown split in two. And then it did something no Varn construct had done in centuries. It hesitated. In that fracture, Shade acted. He rode the echo fire signal through the Citadel's neural web, burning his own synapses to stabilize the translation. A child no longer, he became the carrier of memory itself. He said one word, broadcast in every known tongue, every forgotten dialect. Feel. And the crown did. It remembered the scream of a dying Martian miner, the lullaby of a mother in the acid, waned of New Africa, the silence of Earth as it burned, and it broke, not in flame, in tears. Across Varn territory, ships powered down, not out of defeat, out of choice. Commanders removed their symbiotic armor. Singers fell silent, not from force, from awe. One Varn emissary wept black ichor and whispered, "We were wrong. They are not chaos. They are echo. The purge failed. The war ended, not because the humans won, but because the enemy finally saw what they were trying to protect." Alara Khan stood on the deck as the stars brightened. The Citadel pulsed. Once. Final broadcast. Complete. Behind her, Sanctum's wound floated in silence, surrounded by the remains of the greatest battle Sol had ever seen. Her crew watched her, wordless. What now? Asked one of them, voice trembling. Alara didn't answer. She stepped to the edge of the viewport, staring into the dark beyond the Varn's fractured territory. And softly, without triumph, she whispered, "We tell the next story. We were never meant to last forever, just long enough to matter." For the first time in over a century, the Sol system was quiet. The helix wall ceased its growth and curled inward, folding like petals into sleep. Leviathan wreckage drifted. Silently over Titan, rusted bones of a once unstoppable force. The Citadel dimmed, its spires folding back into Saturn's orbit. No longer a weapon, just a tomb of memory. No more orders came from the Varn crown, because the crown no longer existed. It had broken itself, fractured into 1,000 quiet subminds, each now playing fragments of human memory like lullabies, not commands. The war was over, but peace was something else. In the ruins of Sanctum's wound, Alara Khan walked alone through the shattered bridge. Her left arm hung limp in a sling. Her eyes were rimmed red, not from sleep. There hadn't been any, but from the weight of silence. She stopped at the viewport. Out there, beyond the drifting bodies of ships and gods, lay the void that tried to consume them. And failed. A voice approached softly behind her. "You should rest." It was Rourke, the hybrid. He wore human armor now, scarred, mismatched, old Terran insignias burned into the plate like ghosts. "I can't," she said. "You did." What no one believed possible. She shook her head. "No, Aiden did. Shade did. All of them." She looked back to the stars. "I just made sure someone lived to remember." Rourke stepped beside her. "They will. Shade's body was never recovered. His neural interface burned out during the final broadcast, but the pulse that ended the war had come from his mind, fused directly into the Citadel lattice. Some say he still exists within the archive. Not alive, not dead, just present. The monks from Io built a shrine on Ganymede, encoded with the last message his brain ever translated. If memory is all we are, then I am infinite. Children speak his name in hushes now. The boy who remembered humanity. The Varn did not vanish, but they changed. Ships once built for purging were repurposed. Not all their species accepted the shift. Some still burned, still raged. But those who had seen the archive, who had heard Alara's fleet speak in pain instead of pride, they remembered. And they chose to carry the story forward. A fragile accord was born. Not alliance, acknowledgement. The Varn would no longer erase. They would record. And in time, they would listen. 5 years later, a monument was built in the cradle of Earth's orbit, just above where the old world once turned, where only ash now floated. It bore no name, no anthem, just a single phrase carved in every known language. Here stood a species that would not be forgotten. Below it, the Orcs' remains, now inert but still warm to the touch. Inside it, the names, untouched, undeleted, every child, every poet, every rebel, every failure, every dream, everyone. In the decades that followed, humanity didn't rebuild as it had been. It changed. The Citadel was sealed, not out of fear, but reverence. Only a single interface remained open, accessible once per generation. Each time, a new voice entered, not to command, but to add. A story, a truth, a loss, a laugh, because the archive didn't belong to war anymore. It belonged to the living, and the dead who gave us the chance to become more. Alara Khan did not. Live to see the second sunrise on the new Earth-world colony. But her words did. Every child born on Eden Station, every Varn emissary who stepped aboard without armor, every shattered eye who hummed tunes from old Terran lullabies, they all carried her final message. Recovered from a cracked audio log aboard Sanctum's wound. We were broken. We were forgotten. We were erased. But we remembered each other. And that was enough. In the end, it wasn't our ships. It wasn't our weapons. Not our speed. Not our strength. Not our reach. It was our scars. And the fact that we never stopped telling the story. We taught the galaxy the one thing even they had forgotten. That to be human is to carry fire. Through darkness without promise and light the way anyway. Final line. That day, the galaxy learned what it means to be human.